Look at this ridge, recognise it? It's the famous ridge of Bussaco. So it was here on this steep, rocky ridge that you can see behind me, where the Anglo-Portuguese army under Wellington made a determined stand against the all-conquering French under Marshal Masséna. He was one of Napoleon's favourite and most successful marshals. It was going to be a bitter struggle, that much was obvious. So walk the ground with us today as we discover how that Portuguese army came of age and what Wellington did to hold back the French right here. The importance of this battle was massive. It was the first major battle after Talavera, which was over a year earlier, and it put Wellington in confrontation for the first time with Masséna, who was one of Napoleon's favourite and most able generals. In the last few episodes, we've learned about Masséna's invasion of Portugal, the combat on the Coa, and the siege of Almeida. With me, as always, on this trip is Marcus Cribb. He's a tour guide and Peninsular War historian. But let's get a quick bit of background. How did we end up on this rocky ridge seemingly in the middle of nowhere? So the ridge is 8 miles northeast of the town of Coimbra. It's an imposing feature that rises 200 metres from the valley floor. It was a perfect defensive position, and by the morning of the 26th of September, the British and Portuguese army were concentrated and in position on the reverse slope of this 10-mile-long ridge. Wellington had around 40,000 troops, around half of them British, the rest mainly Portuguese. As Masséna approached, he couldn't be certain of the size or position of this Anglo-Portuguese force. Wellington anchored his right flank on the Mondego River, and here he positioned Major General Rowland Hill, Daddy Hill. To Hill's left was the 5th Division of General Leith, which included 2 Portuguese brigades. There was then a long gap in the line between Leith's division and the 3rd Division under Major General Thomas Picton. The heaviest concentration of men was towards the north end of the ridge, around Bussaco Convent and the village of Sula. We'll be coming back to that later. Wellington was confident that his men would hold. But Masséna, accustomed to victory, was equally certain that his troops would successfully storm the position. The French marshal said, "I cannot persuade myself that Lord Wellington will risk the loss of a reputation by giving battle. But if he does, I have him. Tomorrow we shall effect the conquest of Portugal, and in a few days I shall drown the leopard." So I'm stood now at Marshal Masséna's command post during the battle. There's still the remains of this windmill where he stood on the day, and it does give a good view of most of the ridge here at Bussaco.
Masséna was not to be underrated, and he's known war for a long time. He runs away from home and joins a ship as a cabin boy, and then it joins the Royal French Army as a soldier. And he sees the Revolutionary Wars out on the French side, and is all over Central Europe, Italy.
So he rises up the ranks quickly.
He rises up the ranks very quickly. He's very able. His men think of him as a very good captain, and he becomes a general very early on. And he delivers victory after victory during the Revolutionary Wars and the early Napoleonic Wars as well. He was quite risk taker. He was very forward and daring and dashing, and he would go on the attack. And he's got the forces on his side. He's got the numbers, and he's also, with that track record, he's got the confidence in his men, and they've got it in him that they're going to bring victory today. I might hesitate to say it was overconfidence, with the geography doing half the work against them. Andre Masséna was known as the sweet child of victory by Napoleon. Great nickname. Great. It says everything he wants, you know, in one name. It's summarising that he's going to bring victory to the French army. And they've been defeated quite a few times already in the peninsula by Wellesley Wellington, and actually by the Spanish earlier on at Barlin. And he's here to push the French army up and the Anglo-Portuguese back towards Lisbon. He's got no idea about the lines of Torres Vedras that have been built in near secrecy, and so he hopes that a victory here will sweep the English back into the sea. And the Prince of Essling, as he is titled, was fairly confident, and you'd have to be pretty confident to attack from down there, take the trees away. 200 years, it's become forested, it's rocky, it's steep, and it's enough of an effort just to get up here. We were saying it just driving around these positions and walking around now, it would be tiring just to move on to the preliminary positions, never mind moving up corps, divisions, brigades and battalions and their subunits into line is going to be difficult because there's no flat area to have that. And then marching up in pack, in close formation onto the Sierra itself, it's difficult. And he was fairly confident, and he moves, takes here, and once he's getting towards this position, he's then going to be under fire from the British and Portuguese guns.
So this is where the French launched their first major attack, led by Reynier's Second Corps.
But Reynier's corps is here, Reynier's Second Corps, under Houdelet and Merle, and they're either side of this road and then heading up this mountain pass. Straight up. And he's going to be pushing in with about 26 battalions.
What sort of numbers is that? How many men were in a French battalion, more or less?
French battalions were over 1,000, pushing
Wow.
towards 12,
big numbers.
1,300 men, give or take sickness and casualties. So it's big numbers, and they're going to be going at a central thrust, and up to ahead of us is Picton's division, the gruff-talking Welshmen, and including in there is the 88th Connaught Rangers, who... Good regiment, Gallic warriors.
William Grattan of the 88th, standing nervously in line waiting for the enemy, recalled, I'm not going to do an Irish accent. The fog cleared away and a bright sun enabled us to see what was passing before us. A vast crowd of tirailleurs, never sure how you say that, were passing onward with great ardour, and their fire as well as their numbers was so superior to that of our advance that some men of the Brigade of Lightburn, as also a few of the 88th Regiment, were killed while standing in line. A colour sergeant named McNamara was shot through the head close beside myself and Ensign Outgunned.
Come on, up you bugger, up you bugger.
Rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat. So can you imagine having to cut your way up this slope? There weren't any trees, but it's steep. Loads of stones, gorse and heathers in the accounts. And you're going that, wearing your uniform, your life in your pack, and then you reach areas like this, and you just got to go for it. But you're meant to be in formation. The guy's behind you, tripping up, and you get there, there's guns ahead of you, your mate's pushing you, and someone falls over. This is a really difficult position to attack. You're attacking up. Guys at the front can see where they're going, but they're going to be getting fired upon. We've got to take all the trees out. That's really recent. But they're wearing their full uniform, shakos, thick felt on the French ones with some chain. They've got their packs on as well, cowhide packs. Again, they've got their full life in their bags, their cartouche of musket balls. These are thin straps, everything's cutting into you. Your mate's going to be pushing you on from behind, and it's going to be really easy to trip over. This is all stone underfoot. It's going to be really hard going. Then you've got to the side, you've got the boys with their drums. That's going to be struggling. And then as you start to get up the slope, the guns are firing upon you. And in the distance, redcoats with loaded muskets. This is Bargo. Best troops.
No one wants to attack the best troops in the world.
You don't want to attack the best troops in the world. And to their flanks, untested. But we're going to see if they're very good. We've got brown uniformed and blue uniformed Portuguese.
The pork and beans.
Fucking beans. I've never heard that before.
But despite the difficulty, the steep slopes and the incredible musketry, the French ground their way forward. They reached the crest of the ridge. Grattan of the 88th explains what happened next. He said, Lord Wellington was no longer to be seen, and Wallace and his regiment, standing alone without orders, had to act for themselves. The colonel sent his captain of grenadiers, Dunn, to the right, where the rocks were highest, to ascertain how matters stood, for he did not wish at his own peril to quit the ground he had been ordered to occupy without some strong reason for doing so. All this time the Brigade of Lightburn, as also the 88th, were standing at ordered arms. In a few moments Dunn returned almost breathless. He said the rocks were filling fast with Frenchmen, that a heavy column was coming up the hill beyond the rocks, and that the 4 companies of the 45th were about to be attacked. Wallace asked if he thought half the 88th would be able to do the business. You'll want every man, was the reply. Wallace, with a steady but cheerful countenance, turned to his men, looking them full in the face, and said, Now, Connaught Rangers, mind what you're going to do, pay attention to what I've so often told you, and when I bring you face to face with those French rascals, drive them down the hill. Don't give the false touch, but push home to the muzzle. I have nothing more to say, and if I had it would be of no use, for in a minute or two there'll be such an infernal noise about your ears that you won't be able to hear yourselves. This address went home to the hearts of us all, but there was no cheering. A steady but determined calm had taken the place of any lighter feeling, and it seemed as if the men had made up their minds to go to their work unruffled and not too much excited. And so Lieutenant Colonel John Wallace with his 88th, alongside the 45th and Nottinghams, counterattacked to push the French off the ridge. It was excellent soldiering at the point of the bayonet, what the Brits do best. Colonel Wallace's quick thinking had saved the day for now, but the battle was far from over.
We are not lost. We are wrecking the area and enjoying the battlefield. And of course, this is definitely a 4x4 off-road vehicle, not a hire car.
You know what they say, the best off-road vehicle in the world, a hire car.
So Marcus, it's incredibly windy. But where are we and what can we see up here?
We're right on the ridge top of Bussaco itself on Wellington's headquarters. And these boulders give a much better idea of what it was really like for the British defenders here and the French attackers. Much more open slopes, much more difficult rocks. And it really does give an amazing impression of the height of this Sierra here as well.
So from here, you really get a sense from Wellington's command post, firstly of the length of the ridge, but also we can see a bit of a road down there. And I understand Wellington had his engineers build a road all the way across this ridge. I wonder if that's where the road was.
He certainly did build a road. There's a couple of different tracks up here, and he was up here for a few days and was able to maneuver his guns quite accurately with some help of the engineers who were employed. I remember that the Corps of Sappers and Miners and the Corps of Engineers are slightly separate to today, with officers only in the engineers, but they'd be taking apart positions, using men from different battalions to dig areas out, and it gave Wellington not only the commanding position, but he can then move guns and men up and down here to counter the French attacks.
Rain and the wind are coming in now. The rest of this film might be a bit difficult to make, but we'll keep persevering. But it's fine. Skin's waterproof and the body's a boiler, right? So Marcus, up on the ridge we've got this beautiful building, and it is significant to the battle, isn't it? What is it?
So this is the Bussaco Palace, which at the time was a convent, but more importantly the night before the battle was Wellington's headquarters, and he took this building as his main headquarters, moved his staff and his intelligence officers and his aides into this area, and he did travel up and down the lines both the night before and the morning of the battle, seeing the men. And we know he inspected the positions before dawn, as he often did. He was a man of action, and he didn't sleep very much. He wrote thousands of letters over his campaigns, so he would be up micromanaging. He was a micromanager, but you get this flavour of a guy that positions are just off, but he's still a general. He's still from minor aristocracy, so he's still having a little bit of his comforts, and he was known to keep a very good wine with his staff as well.
Top man.
I can't complain at
Just
that
like
at all.
you.
I've got a big flavour for it, but you can't go wrong with the Portuguese wine, so I'm hoping they had a good cellar. But we're not very far from the positions, about a 5-minute walk, so he's very much on the area if he needs to be.
So as you know, part of this trip was funded by you guys actually. Essentially you helped to sponsor this visit, and I want to thank a few of you today. I want to thank Harry Shriver for his kind donation, Tom Golding Lee, fellow historian, hopefully he'll be on the show soon, and of course my good mate Cam Simpson. Cam's over in Australia, but believe it or not, Cam actually did a bit of a family tree and believes he's descended from Marshal Beresford. Now Marshal Beresford's important to our story today because it was him who helped to train the Portuguese army that came of age at this battle. And two other people I want to quickly thank. One of them is Steve Bickley and the other one is James Mace. He's a good mate of mine. These guys did make a donation, but it was after we'd got back from the trip, so I was unable to thank them on location. James writes fantastic books, and if you want to find out more about his Zulu war fiction, his Roman fiction, then go to his website legionarybooks.net. All right guys, let's crack on. So we're here at what's called Moinho de Sula, the mill of Sula. This served as a command post to General Robert Crawford, commander of the Anglo-Portuguese troops that defended the northern flank of the Sierra Bussaco. It says here its strategic location allowed it to see the enemy's movements during the battle. So Marcus, we're by the windmill where Black Bob Crawford had his command post, commanding the light division during the battle. What happened right here?
So this is Sula, and it's basically towards the Allied left. And Black Bob Crawford now has got his elite light division. He's built it up. He's got the 43rd Light Infantry, the 52nd, the 95th Rifles, and the Portuguese Cazadores. And we've got Ney's Corps coming up here under Loisson's division. And they're moving up these steep slopes.
And they are steep slopes.
And they are really steep here. It drops away, really steep behind us. And he swings out and they engage. They've got the extra advantage here of the Baker rifles, and they push back the French right thrust as they're trying to get up. They don't quite get as far as the French left, and the ground again is working out towards them. And it's a really good example of the Portuguese and the British now working together in a joint unit as well.
And how did they defend? Were they in line? How did they take on the French as they came up in column?
So the light infantry are capable of doing both. So they fought in line and then would send a mass of skirmishers out to fight off the columns. And it would be very successful in fighting back their voltigeurs. The French had skirmishers too. And the French skirmishers would normally outrank the British. But here they're able to really skirmish out. They've got so many light infantry troops and the ground's really good for that. All these rocks around us and the steep slopes.
Plenty of cover and concealment.
You can get into the cover, and rather than standing just in line, they're starting to use that. They're fighting in pairs, so it's a two-man operation. One's firing and picking targets and the other one's either moving or reloading. And that kind of good drills, the men are being chosen for their intelligence, or they're being drilled into them to think for themselves rather than just being machines. And they're really using this ground, and it's perfect for them to use.
So the French closed to within 20 metres before Crawford turned to the 2 regiments of light infantry lying behind him and screamed, "Now 52nd, revenge the death of Sir John Moore." With a cheer, the Redcoats rushed forward, fired a devastating volley and then charged. Lieutenant Charles Booth of the 43rd Regiment of Foot picks up the story. He said, "The front of their columns alone, chiefly composed of officers, stood the charge. The rest took to their heels, throwing away their arms and pouches, etc. Our men did not stand to take prisoners. What were taken were those left in our rear. The advanced part of the charging line, after throwing themselves into the midst of the enemy's retreating columns, killing, wounding, and in short felling to the ground lots of them, were with great difficulty halted and then commenced from the flanks of the whole division the most destructive flanking fire that I believe I ever witnessed." Amongst the prisoners taken by the Light Division was French General of Brigade Simon. He was captured by Private James Hopkins of the 52nd, who received a pension of £20 per annum for his bravery. Now that's interesting because in a few weeks I've got an episode coming up about how people were awarded, were there gallantry medals for the Peninsular War, that sort of thing. You might be interested in that. So be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss it. And does this mark almost the end of the French attacks? Was there much after this, or was this basically them done?
This was it. They couldn't do much more. They managed to get closer on towards Picton's area and fight onto the plateau. But here, once they've come up the steep areas, they've had the howitzers, they've had the rifles. Once they get quite close and receive a few volleys, there's no energy to come for a second attack. And honestly, you're looking at the grounds, it's a superhuman effort even to get up here.
Yo, it's cold today. So here at the top of the hill, we've got this monument built by the Portuguese. I'm told it's the second monument. The first one hit by lightning, badly damaged. So at the top there, I believe that piece of metal acts as a lightning rod. Now, if you come up here, if you're passing by, it's a great spot. There's a museum just down the hill and there's a wonderful panoramic view. So Marcus, mate, Wellington's had a good victory, but what happens? What are the casualties and what happens after the battle? How important did this victory prove to be?
So it's quite heavy casualties on both sides. The British are 1,000 to 2,000 casualties killed and wounded, and the French are somewhere in the region of 3,000 to 4,500 killed, wounded, and captured.
That's incredible, isn't it?
So it's really heavy casualties on the French, and it's what you'd expect when you stand here and you look out upon this steep position. They're going to take a lot of fire trying to get up here. Wellington camps out for the night here. They've got to treat their wounded, and the French find a route round to the north and a road that's going to bypass them. But what happens is Wellington's got in his back pocket the lines of Torres Vedras, and he can move south, bring the population and bring as much food and supplies as he can to survive the winter behind a secret supply line of fortifications that will bring him victory.
So if you want to learn more about the campaign at the lines of Torres Vedras, a great surprise, wonderful strategic success for Wellington, then be sure to subscribe to see the next video. In the meantime, before that's out, YouTube thinks you're going to like the video that's on screen now, so check that out.